I'm a senior advisor at the Westpac Foundation, and I'm also the co-chair of the Australian Pro Bono Network. And for me, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm sure you're all Zoom pros now, but just a bit of a reminder, if you'd like to just switch your settings to speaker view, and that's the best way for you guys to see the speakers. We'll take this holding slide down in a moment. So just switch over to speaker view, and we'll be taking questions towards the end, but feel free to pop any questions that come up for you in the chat, and we'll grab them at the end of the session. We're also going to be recording this session because, as you know, a lot of people can't make time, so we'll make this available just so people are aware. So feel free, if you don't want to sort of ask your question verbally, just pop it in the chat. But yeah, we'd just love to welcome back everyone that's attended one of our webinars before, and a really warm welcome to new attendees. For those that are new, the Australian Pro Bono Network is a practitioner-led community of corporates, and we exist to promote knowledge sharing, collaboration around best practice in pro bono and skill volunteering. And we're really seeking to promote the business value of pro bono and skill volunteering alongside the community value and sustainability aspect of pro bono and skill volunteering. So our topic today is pro bono and employee engagement. And it's a really interesting cases and drivers, and potentially more important now than ever, as people are feeling quite isolated working from home. So we're really looking forward to our speakers today. We have Bono Srikanthan, Foundation Director and Global Engagement Programs from Atlassian, and Alice Crawley, a colleague of mine who's a Senior Manager of Culture and Transformation at Westpac Group. So we'll just get rid of that slide and see their lovely faces. Just to intro Jono first, because I'm going to ask him the first question. Two things that get him excited about life, according to his LinkedIn profile, are being able to make a positive impact in his community and being able to lead, motivate and empower others to do the same in their community. And over the past 20 years, his career has enabled him to do just that. He's managed two iconic foundations, the Qantas Foundation and now the Atlassian Foundation, where he's had the opportunity to really harness business resources for the betterment of society. He's also co-founded Young Social Change Agents, a social enterprise not-for-profit that empowers young people to be positive change agents, all the while gaining valuable 21st century skills. Alice, who's my colleague from Westpac Group, she's a senior manager within culture and transformation for the group and has had 20 years experience leading and coaching and training global teams through really complex, large-scale transformations. She specializes in cultural transformations and bringing leaders and teams together to achieve great results through value alignment, mindset, and behavioral change. She's currently working on a big culture change piece at Westpac, focused on areas around supporting people through purpose, values, and behaviour for deeper connection and engagement in the face of complex change and uncertainty. She also works with me across the Westpac Foundation on a program called our Board Observership, where we're connecting senior leaders across Westpac and Minter Ellison as observers for a 12-month period on not-for-profit boards. So she's got great first-hand experience of the leadership benefits of really strategic pro bono engagement. So welcome, Jono and Alice, for joining us. And we'll kick off into some questions now. I've got a few prepared questions here that I'm really curious about. But yeah, I encourage you guys to think of some questions as we go and pop them into the chat, and we'll come back to those towards the end. So just to start with you, Jono, for those that are familiar with Atlassian, it's a pretty formidable foundation in terms of what you support your employees to do from a pro bono and skilled volunteering perspective, and I know engagement's been a really strong focus of your strategy. So just love to understand a bit more about how it fits in with your impact strategy and why.
Hey guys, thanks for the intro, Sally. I have got to update my LinkedIn profile. Just when it read back to you, it is just so confronting in a way. So thanks for that. And lovely to meet everyone from home in the inner west of Sydney. So I guess the question is a little bit about engagement and how engagement fits into our strategy. Just a quick overview. We've got three main focus areas for the foundations. We call them three main pillars. That is educate, enlist, and energize. Educate focuses pretty much where most of our money goes into supporting education-related programs around preparing kids for jobs of the future. The second one, enlist, is really about taking that pledge 1% model that works so well for us and Salesforce and a number of other organizations and sort of scale it to the startup. And the third pillar, and it's what probably I'm so biased towards, and it's the pillar that I lead, is energize. And that is really about our people, getting them sort of engaged and energized and mobilized so that they can make a difference in their communities and where they sort of live and work sort of thing. We have a sort of a slogan that really drives what we do in the Energize pillar, and it basically goes like this: more Atlassians are deeply engaged in the impact of social impact, in the social impact of the foundation. So what that means is kind of there's two parts to it. One is the more Atlassians. We really want to get as many of our people out the door doing something related to sort of social impact. Right now, most of these sort of activities are sort of the low touch activities where people just do something. But the goal is do something, and that's what we're really trying to get our people doing. And with all these, we've got targets, and so our target for FY21 is we want to get at least 75% of the company doing something. Now that could be that's predominantly volunteering, but also participation in sort of awareness raising sort of programs and giving and things like that. But the goal again is to get them out the door. The deeply part of our strategy is about the deep impact sort of work that our people do, and it comes back to sort of the value that we put on the skill sets that our people have. But we think that we have got some of the smartest people working for us, present company excluded, that they can do some amazing things with their skills and with their intellect. And we just want to really get those skills, bring them to bear on the nonprofit sector and support the sector in any way. So again, the more Atlassians, it's about engaging as many people as possible, that once they're engaged, that they will sort of follow through and do the deeply impactful sort of work. So that's a bit of an overview of sort of where I'm going to be coming from an engagement perspective about people.
Thanks, Jono. And just to kind of follow up on that, I mean, that's impressive, 75%. I know my colleague from our pro bono EAG at Westpac's on the line. Hi, Jason. That would be an amazing aspiration for us. So yeah, fantastic to hear about those targets as well. I'm just curious a bit more about the kinds of programs that you have to drive that level of engagement. I'm aware that you sort of focus beyond just skill volunteering to more general volunteering, and tell us more about your ambitions for this area of engagement and the kinds of programs that you've got happening across Atlassian.
Sure, yeah. The COVID really put a big spanner in the works for us in terms of our engagement. So we predominantly focused on volunteering up until end of last year as our main driver. And, the numbers were looking really good as we sort of headed towards our target. And in last financial year, targets were 65% of the company. And we were sitting at sort of by December, we were sitting at sort of that 60% mark. COVID hit, and, we're still recruiting people, but the participation numbers went low. And so what we really did was, and then on top of that, what we noticed was people that were kind of volunteering were almost not really engaging themselves in sort of the areas that they were passionate about. And so at that point, we were thinking about, hey, actually, we need to really redo how we do engagement, from, you know, just putting people into volunteering to how can we get them a lot more aware of the situations and the challenges that their community focus. So when COVID hit, it gave us the opportunity to sort of pivot from pure volunteering through to, hey, how can we engage people in issues? And I'll give you an example. Black Lives Matter was a classic example of sort of what drove this program. In Australia and in the US, where most of our employees were, Black Lives Matter became really prominent. But what we found was people didn't have a clue of some of the issues facing Indigenous Australia, for example, because 60% of our workforce are expats. We had a small group of people that wanted to create a rap, and they were hammer and tongs into trying to pull that together. But what we decided was probably the best thing we could do is, rather than create the rap, well, let's take a step back and let's get as many Atlassians understanding what reconciliation means, right? And so we developed programs around what that meant. It was almost a self-service sort of L&D type program, and that put people through, and we put a lot of people through that program, which really helped us, one, create a great awareness around a social issue, but also helped us increase our participation rate. What then happened from flow on from that was a lot of people then went on to explore volunteering opportunities, giving back opportunities with Indigenous Australian charities, with Black American sort of charities and so on like that. And so it's sort of, as soon as you kind of created that self-awareness, people were a lot more engaged to then self-drive their participation. So they're the sorts of things that we really want to do more of. We launched the virtual grants program I think it was in August. And while we didn't have a great uptake in terms of new ideas that we were hoping to uncover, what it did bring about was this sort of focus on getting our people more self-aware. And so we're starting to pull a lot more programs around self-awareness, getting people understanding social issues, and then using that as a springboard to then getting them into sort of volunteering and participating more deeply.
Wow. Thanks, Jono. I love how you think about it as, I guess, a journey. So working with people just to engage them in social issues, and then, progressing them into sort of more unskilled or skilled volunteering. That's a really interesting way to
Sorry, can I give an example? And I might have shared this with a few
people in this
group, and it's an old example, but it probably highlights it really well as to why engagement at a self-awareness sort of space is really important. It's about 3-4 years ago, we had a guy at Atlassian who's quite senior and had one of the biggest teams in Atlassian, and really needed to get him on board so that we can engage his whole team. The guy was a detractor from everything, foundation, volunteering, social impact. He just wanted to get on with his job, didn't believe in it. Anyway, it just so happened that his leadership team wanted to go and do a day of team building sort of thing. And they approached us and we introduced them to a charity. I won't mention the name, but they dragged this guy along and they were packing boxes, doing a lot of manual labor sort of work, but he loved it. He loved it because he connected with the vision of the organization, the cause, the CEO. He comes back and he goes, look, this is great, but I can do more. I can use my skill sets more. So he starts doing a lot of skill-based volunteering with this organization. He opens it up to his whole team. His team's now volunteering participation rates go high. Within the space of almost 8 months, he'd gone from being sort of a detractor of all things foundation through to doing the low bono sort of work, to the pro bono high-end skill work, to finally donating like $100K from his own sort of personal funds to this charity, right? And it was a really awesome sort of track to take him on, journey to see him go through, which wouldn't have happened if he didn't sort of engage with the charity at almost a personal sort of deeper level sort of thing.
To be actually physically in
do that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I often think about it as a social leadership journey. And yeah, team activities can be a fantastic entree into that, especially, working with large teams, and then having those leaders champion the skill volunteering activities later on. Just conscious we've got Alice as one of our speakers today, and I'd love to throw to you, Alice. For many of us practitioners, we're really aware of the engagement benefits. in terms of how effective it is for business. I mean, I know at Westpac, we recently did a skill volunteering survey, and 89% of our volunteers said they felt more engaged in their work at Westpac as a result of skill volunteering. But how do we kind of break through to the HR kind of departments and really demonstrate the impact? And I was just curious, from your perspective as a senior leader in HR, what your colleagues sort of view about pro bono and what you'd suggest to us as practitioners in terms of selling the benefits to L&D colleagues.
So thank you, Sally, and thank you for the intro. And we've been on a really, really interesting journey in the Westpac Group. And it was, quite serendipitous that I started on a journey of developing a leadership development program supporting board observers, so leaders, developing governance skills on boards, at the same time that I was asked to lead a piece around a fairly long play on cultural and transformation. I simply wanted to also say at the beginning that, Jono, I loved what you were saying about deep impact, and I often talk about deep connection. And one of the things that I've found in my, couple of decades of experience in the organizations that I've worked across with transformation is that people need to be deeply connected, and they need a sense of purpose, and they need to be anchored back to a why. So we know how important that is. The journey that we've gone on with COVID has been, it's been a really interesting one. And I love the Japanese character, actually, Kiki. The word for chaos in Japanese is a combination of the two characters, danger and fear, and opportunity. And I would say that what's come out of this year is, yes, there's been danger and fear, but there's also been a lot of opportunity. And the opportunity that has come out of this, and how this does link back to the engagement in terms of, senior players at Westpac, is that people have been forced to really step back through this chaos and this uncertainty to consider what's really important to them. Why are we doing what we're doing, and what's our sense of purpose? So Westpac, as a group, for example, have gone through an exercise around resetting purpose, values, and behaviors. And part of our process around getting the buy-in at a very senior level was being able to demonstrate that there's a really critical link to people feeling a sense of purpose and feeling a sense of connection with what they're doing every day. And not only does that help engage them and help them feel connected, like Jono's example, feel connected to a company values and company mission, and a sense of purpose. But there's also these incredible benefits and byproducts that come out of that. So part of what we've done as from a buy-in point of view is to really position the value proposition of pro bono and skilled volunteering and these skilled opportunities, is to demonstrate back to the executive leadership team and the GMs, not only is this helping the organization in terms of people feeling vested, feeling a sense of connection, feeling a sense of purpose, but the skills that they're developing through this leadership development have an incredible reinvestment value back into the organization. So some of the big skill sets that we've been getting, extraordinary feedback on from the participants that they're developing is around, risk taking, how to navigate risk, how to navigate difficult conversations, how to develop resilience. And that has a very strong alignment to the organizational priorities. So part of what we've been able to position, and it's actually happened quite organically. It wasn't a case of needing to kind of, work out what's the strategic alignment. Quite organically, we realized there's some incredible synergies between the pro bono work and skilled volunteering, and how that helps the organization, not only on an individual connected sense of purpose point of view, but as a whole, we're re-injecting this amazing experience that leaders are getting in the community, being on that, those front-facing roles on boards where there's really challenging conversations happening, lots of risk, particularly this year. I mean, a number of the leaders we spoke to that we, had in sessions have as part of the board observer program, have spoken to for the not-for-profit sector. This has probably been, ultimately it's been one of the most challenging times they faced into in their organizational history, let alone our entire human history, right? So it's been a really exceptional time for people to step up and consider, what do I want to do as an individual? How do I need to develop to really step up, have these courageous conversations? What do I need to do, and how can I play a part, in the community, but also, back in the organization. So I think ultimately the short answer is looking for the opportunities to align the strategic priorities of the organization with the pro bono and skilled volunteering, of which, certainly this year we found there's an extraordinary amount, and really playing to the opportunity that leaders out there in the community, as they develop their risk, their resilience, their decision-making skills, they're bringing that back into the organization, which leads to long-term sustainable cultural change. The other key pillar that I would flag in there is the relationship building. And that's been one of the big ticket items that we've heard from participants that have been involved in governance and boards in the social sector, is what they've learned in terms of building high trust relationships. Now, high trust relationships and leadership, that's your cornerstone. Those are your cornerstones of cultural change. So any opportunity, to get leaders out there leading in social enterprise and the community, and bringing that back into the organization in terms of building those high trust relationships, that's going to be a win-win, for any organization, particularly at these difficult times where we're going through uncertainty, chaos, crisis, and, large-scale transformation.
Wow. Thanks, Alice. I'd love to pick up on the benefits and those skills further, and maybe throw back to you, Jono, because the specific example Alice is talking about is senior leaders on board. So it's quite a high level sort of strategic engagement, but there's obviously overlap there with the skills they're developing to more broadly any sort of unskilled or more ad hoc sort of volunteering. So I'd love to hear from you, Jono, in terms of the sort of skills that you're seeing your people develop through the engagement that you're building with the community sector.
Yeah, look, I think I'd probably break it down to about 3 or 4 sort of different types. The first one's your hard skills that our people kind of develop. We've got to give you an example. We are doing a massive push towards moving from sort of server-based products to cloud-based products, right? And we're getting a lot of our people volunteering with some of our nonprofit customers in helping them migrate from sort of server to cloud. Now, as part of that volunteering, they're learning a lot about what the migration process is and what that requires, which they're then translating it to their skill sets, to their business processes and their offerings to, the broader different other sectors and so on like that. So very much the hard skill sets. But I think what we're finding is that the bigger benefit is the softer sort of skill sets. So for example, the increasing confidence, the ability to communicate, be leaders in sort of leading programs and so on, which probably if you're a lowly sort of, sitting with your hoodie on developer, sitting there pumping out code, you won't get the opportunity to sort of develop those skills. So people are using volunteering as a way of sort of learning those skills. Empathy, that's another big one, right? Like actually putting yourself in the shoes of, nonprofits, beneficiaries, being able to do their jobs with minimal resources, skill sets, and so on like that. So definitely soft skills is one of the bigger ones. The other one that we're really finding emerging quite a lot, especially over the last sort of 8-9 months, is this idea of purpose, right? A lot of people are sort of seeking something a bit more to their lives than just coming in and doing their work and getting a paycheck or creating great products. It is that sense of, hey, I'm actually on this planet to do something more and greater for the benefit of society and giving back. And people are starting to find that purpose, and that's really keeping them a lot more energized, engaged in their sort of work and in their and sort of navigate the sort of the COVID environment that we're all going through.
Fantastic. I've got one more question for both of you, and then there's a couple here that I'd love to throw to. But we had a little discussion about this previously, Jono, in terms of how we as practitioners sort of grow our pro bono program, knowing that there's all these amazing benefits for our people. But what's sort of holding us back from investing more in them, and what do we need to do better?
I think Alice mentioned the word, what did she say? The showing the value, the business value to the business, right? Showing them the value that they can get from sort of pro bono, greater engagement and community and so on like that. So I think that's probably the one that I think we struggle with a little bit. And it's going beyond just the whole, hey, this is a nice, fluffy thing to do to keep our people engaged. There's actually other sort of benefits that we want to show, like, mention the soft, hard skills, the purpose, the recruitment sort of benefits and so on. And so one of the things that we're doing this year, and, it'd be awesome to present back on this at some time, how it goes. It's a bit of an experiment. Atlassian runs on these things called OKRs. And I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're essentially goals and KPIs, right? And the company's got, like 5 or 6 key goals that everybody sort of drives towards. And then teams within themselves have got sort of KPIs and goals that sort of all go up to those broader company goals. And what we wanted to do this year was actually get volunteering right into that top company goals. So, we've got these big aspirational goals around, as a company moving, into cloud and hitting our recruitment numbers, but also hitting volunteering numbers, right? And that is 75% of the company, of each team, has done some sort of volunteering. That is going to be really, really interesting for us, because one of the goals that we've set is, as part of that, we want to show that by volunteering, that there's all these other sort of benefits that teams are getting. So, for example, we want to show that through volunteering, there's a higher level of cohesion and team engagement, especially in kind of the COVID lockdown, remote working sort of environment. We want to show that through volunteering, people are developing those hard skills, those soft skills. We want, and ultimately what we want, the success on this, the 1.0, 100% goal we want to get to, is teams see so much value in this that it gets adopted in next year's goals and then the subsequent goals as well. And that's sort of the big BHAG that we've set on that. So to answer your question, really what's holding us back is showing the value to the business and getting the investment from there. And this is generally how we're hoping to kind of demonstrate it.
Yeah, great. And for anyone that's on the call, please feel free to pop something in the chat if you've got any thoughts on how you've illustrated value as well, because it'd be great to bring your voice into the conversation. Just to go back to you, Alice, before we open it up more broadly, from your sort of HR and leadership perspective, we've been working on this board observership program. That's only one program that I'm aware of, except for the Jarwin program at Westpac, where it is embedded and supported by the business. And I'm just curious what you think might be holding us back from growing programs like that, knowing that the benefits are so aligned to the business needs.
100%. Yeah, no, thank you, Sally. And I think, absolutely concur with a lot of what Jono said. And, it was a great opportunity. It was a challenge, and it was also an opportunity this year due to cost transformation, which I don't think would be, unique to Westpac. I think there'd be a lot of organizations, given the impacts of COVID, going through cost transformation, that we were asked to demonstrate and quantify, the value of, pro bono work, and get some measures around that. So it was an opportunity for us to, start looking at, well, how do we, to Jono's point, we kind of put together a use case and put together some quantifications around the, the sense of connection, the sense of appreciation, the awareness that was being developed and how valuable that was with respect to, injecting that expertise back into the business. So I think very similar to what Jonna was saying, it really does come down to being able to raise visibility and awareness around how valuable this is. And we've been talking today about that sense of connection and that sense of purpose. And, like Jonna was saying, having worked in cultural and transformation, work for as long as I have and being a change expert, it always makes me chuckle a little bit that, of course, we talk about the soft skills, and the soft skills, that's actually that's the difficult bit. Those are the kind of the intangibles that are more challenging to measure in terms of how do you negotiate, how do you approach those crucial conversations, how do you challenge people, when you don't agree with how things are playing out in the boardroom, that, the supposed soft skills, which, those are the tricky bits. I think that where, we were able to, the exercise we went through this year, what was, it was a great opportunity, as I say, because out of this value proposition, we ended up getting some significant buy-in from our group GM of HR, who decided to join, the board of the Westpac Foundation. So we got a huge win in that, in terms of, raising awareness with a very senior leader who's very influential across the group. So I think the more, the more that we can raise visibility and awareness around how valuable this is, the more, the more organizations and leaders are going to invest from this into these opportunities, because understandably, at any executive level, at any senior level, the amount of pressure, I think we'd all agree, the amount of pressure on these senior players is huge in terms of producing outcomes, delivering to KPIs, etc. So I think the more that we can demonstrate that, hey, if your people and your leaders, they're invested in this, they care in this, not only are they going to help the community, but this in turn is going to help your organization as a whole. I think that's what we need to continue to break through. So I feel like even in this past 12 months, we've experienced a shift in consciousness with some of the leaders we've worked with, from them thinking that, pro bono and skilled volunteering, that's great, you're spreading serotonin, it feels good, to actually getting them in the camp of understanding, okay, wow, there's measured benefits to investing in this. So I think the more that we can demonstrate that, raise awareness and visibility of that, the more that we'll get traction on this to encourage organizations and senior leaders to invest in these opportunities.
Thanks so much, Alice. I'm just going to go to the chat now, because we've got a few questions coming in. There were some questions that I think, Jono, you've answered around the 75% engagement goal. Do you just want to, just for the benefit of everyone that hasn't read the chat, just to clarify that for the group in terms of that as an impact goal?
Yeah, we essentially have a goal where we want 75% of our employees engaging with us in some way, and predominantly probably 95% of the engagement is through volunteering. So they have to log at least 1 hour of leave, foundation leave, and then the other, 5, probably 7-8% is probably attending social impact courses, programs, just to kind of build their awareness up. But we include those as well as a way of engagement. And I think going forward, we'll probably do more of those, because that is such a big part of sort of engagement.
Right. And then there's a follow-on question for you too, Jono, from Megan. Interested to know how much of the volunteer awareness opportunities are organised by your team versus, small teams within businesses. We can only organise so much ourselves. So how do you kind of seed those ideas and opportunities to have the business kind of driving the volunteering?
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to do as less work as possible, but let's be honest, right? Like, I think, look, if I look at it, it's probably about 60% is done by our team. And we're moving into sort of big programmatic sort of program campaigns. Like quarterly, we're going to put on like some pretty big events for people to get involved with. but the other 40% are very much self-driven, organized by teams. And to pick up on the second question, I think that Anna, you asked about foundation contribution to costs. One of the things that we're starting to do and explore a bit more is actually, instead of doing direct grants to organizations to engage our people, because a part of our engagement grants is about engaging people, we're going to be essentially giving the money towards teams and saying, hey guys, here's a grant of, here's 5 grand, 10 grand, 20 grand, go knock yourself out. The goal is you've got to engage your whole team, sort of thing. So, and we're hoping that through that, and we've had some successes in doing that, we're hoping through that people can self-organize, teams can self-organize, because generally teams know their people better than we would ever, all the time. And they have contacts, they have, you know, channels and ability to mobilize people better than we would always do. So we're going to be kind of putting a bit more resources into those sorts of avenues.
Great. That's, yeah, I love that idea of just putting it out to the teams in terms of how they invest and manage those relationships. I mean, at Westpac, in terms of that question, we have, I guess, strategically been thinking about how we kind of facilitate more skill volunteering across the business by having it employee-led. And I think Jason might have dropped off the call, but he was here for a little while. He is the chair of our employee action group for pro bonos. So we have, I think, 500 odd members now across Westpac of people that are very interested in engaging or actively engaging in pro bono. And they use sort of like an internal Facebook group to post opportunities on there. So we've been able to, in a very light touch way, have them kind of drive engagement and post opportunities without it sort of necessarily coming through any formal process with the foundation. So that's for us been fantastic. I haven't put a measure on sort of what percentage of volunteering has come through that channel compared to directly through the foundation, but over time, yeah, our hope is definitely that will be more employee led and giving them the tools and the support they need to have really successful and effective engagements. There's another question there from Marlo. Question for all, keen to understand how you scale to suit huge orgs like Westpac and Atlassian. Daisy will be able to back me up on this, that a lot of engagement is through relationship building and genuine connections with colleagues who will become involved through one-on-one conversations. How do you find the balance between raising engagement but not losing the personal touch? So I don't know.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to pick that one up, and I think it's a great question, and it's a good call out, you know, that you do need to find the balance. I'm a firm believer that, you know, with, you know, leaders, when they show up in a very real and authentic way, they have an opportunity to engage, and they can even engage at scale in a way that's connected and meaningful with employees. And absolutely, there's no substitute for that one-on-one connection and that one-on-one relationship building. And I think it's important to not, you know, underestimate how important it is to have the right, you know, hence why I sort of made the reference to the example of the GM that we got that buy-in with on the Westpac Foundation board, and why that's so important is because of, you know, in for that particular example, his advocacy around the importance of inclusion, of diversity, and how important this cause is. And, you know, when you have the right leaders that show up in a really authentic way, that advocate for the importance of this, you really can influence change at scale. And it really is a case of making sure that the right senior leaders are, you know, equipped with the right information, that they have the awareness, that they have the understanding of how important this is. And I know earlier in the call, you know, Jono gave that example of the individual they were working with that they got that engagement with. If you can get that, you know, activate that passion in a senior leader, it, you know, it really can't be underestimated how much change that they can influence in terms of engaging, you know, engaging at scale. It really does come down to senior leaders. The tone from the top has to be authentic, and they really, they have to be, I know it's a bit of a you know, it's a bit of a street expression, but you have to be smoking what you're selling, you know, and I know that that's, you know, but, you know, they need to be bought in, they need to be convinced of the importance of this. And that's, you know, that's really going to help the engagement and the promotion. And I think from there, really what you can look at cascading that and doing a cascaded engagement. So the senior levels, the tone from the top, when they're fully engaged, they help to empower their senior leaders to be engaged, which then, you know, filters through the organization. So I think that would be, you know, that would be my take on that. And absolutely, the personal touch should never be lost in the process, whether you're speaking to one person or 1,000 people. You know, it needs to be that individual committed to the cause, communicating that to another person about how important that purpose and that connection is.
Can I just add one more to that, which is fantastic. It is a tough thing as you grow to kind of maintain that personal thing. One of the things practically that we're doing is every touch point that an Atlassian has when they come to the organization, when they're in the organization, when they leave, there's a touch point with the foundation, and we try to build that in. So for example, when they are onboarded, we make it a point for them to volunteer when they onboard. So that first day, there's a 30 to 45 minute sort of engagement piece, which includes a bit of volunteering. Another example, silly, but kind of gets the message across. We're starting to open up some of our offices, and as they go in, they get face masks. So we've got the face masks made by a social enterprise that we support in Cambodia. And there's a piece of comms associated with that about the impact and so on, and how people can get involved and things like that. So every touch point, I think it's really important to sort of reiterate that message where possible.
Awesome, Jono. There's a couple more that have flowed in. Some of them are specific to you, Jono, about from Jess. Jess is from the Australian Pro Bono Centre, and they have the legal targets, and she's asking around, did you consider other targets, i.e. hourly? How did you decide on the participation target, and how you're measuring internal impact, such as professional development?
Yeah, we do have other targets. The volunteering is the big one, but the other one is the hours. So we have a target that in addition to 75% of organizations participate, we want to get 6 hours, at least 6 hours per person, right? So that's a tough one, right? In sort of this remote world, you know, it's easy to get 1 hour, it's easy to get, you know, 45 minutes, but pushing it to that 6 hours, it's going to be difficult. We've got targets around giving as well. We want to sort of encourage people to participate through giving. How do we measure internal impact? Very badly. As part of this sort of KPI thing that we're doing, where we've got it into our OKRs, what we're doing this year is we've set a baseline. We did a baseline survey about how people feel about the engagement that, the impact that the foundation's having, the impact that they're having, their professional development skills, and so on. So we created a bit of a baseline. And then at the end of Q3, we're going to do another sort of baseline sort of survey and then have a look at that to see if there's actually been any growth in terms of, you know, perceptions of impact, and what was the other one, in terms of professional skills development, cohesions within team, all those different sort of business benefits and so on like that. So we are starting to move towards measuring our impact, but this has been the first year that we're actually doing it.
Yeah, which is, you know, it is a tricky subject, and it is one that we want to tackle as a network. So our next webinar will be on measuring impact, and yeah, there's some great ideas that are coming through there. I mean, just wouldn't it be great if we had some kind of baseline measures that we could compare across corporates in terms of, you know, the professional skills development and the engagement, as we do kind of compare on hours. I think we might have time for just one more question here, which is, I guess, calling out to those that aren't the large organizations like the Atlassians and the Westpacs that are maybe starting out. You know, what advice can we give them specifically on, you know, kicking off a small pro bono program that will scale as the organization grows? I know you've got the 1% pledge program that possibly kicked Atlassians off, but keen to see what you would recommend there. Jono, for Maddie, who asked that question.
Um, yeah, no, look, I think one of our success stories was an organization that and I'm just trying to understand. So the question is, a small startup looking to start a pro bono. Okay. When Atlassian was, the smallest startup that it was, one of the things that we did was we partnered with Room to Read. And at that stage, Room to Read wasn't a well-known organization either. And what we did was we worked with Room to Read to engage Atlassians at different points. But it wasn't just engaging our employees, but it was also how do we engage our business part of the company as well. And one of the things that we did was this was going back to about 15 years ago. We were about to launch our new starter licenses program, and we were going to give it away free, right, for 10 users. What we decided with Room to Read was, hey, instead of giving it away free, let's just charge $10 and give all that money to Room to Read for our work in Cambodia that they were doing. We thought we'd get about $15,000. I think by the end of sort of that first quarter, they'd raised like $100,000 to Room to Read just by selling those starter licenses. Over that 15 years, that has grown to now, where through that program, we are donating about $1 million to Room to Read, just through that program over 15 years to $1 million. And then on top of that, we've used that program to build in our workplace giving. So our employees give about $500,000 through workplace giving as well. And I guess my advice, if you are starting, right, Pledge 1% is great. Look at that. That gives you a really good sort of framework about how to do engagement in terms of money, where to put your products and so on. But the other advice I give is to start with a small organization and grow together, right? And use it for a dual benefit. So I hope I answered that question.
I think you did, Jono. I think that's great advice, and those multi-year, long-term partnerships are fantastic, and that's definitely the approach we've taken through the foundation, and have learnt so much ourselves from working with those organisations over time in terms of how we can leverage impact across the organisation, not just through skill volunteering, but other resources and networks. We've got another question. We'll just quickly see if we can answer this one from Rory. Maybe Alice, if you're there, have any of these pro bono targets actually been set as KPIs in employee PPR, PDRs? I mean, I'll leave that one to you, Alice. Yeah, if you want to comment on that.
No. Thank you for that. And Rory, I think it's a great question. So we're on the journey. We're on the way to that. So we've kind of, as I explained, we've kind of taken that next step, at a senior level within HR to link the criticality of these leadership development programs and the value proposition and the benefits to the organization. And the next leg of the journey is looking at how do we actually establish some rewards and recognition and link that to KPIs. I don't feel like that's going to be too much of a stretch, because we've already established that strategic alignment with respect to the behaviors and skills that are essential within pro bono and skilled volunteering work, and what's essential within the organization. So the next piece is really getting that, that senior level buy-in to identify. And again, it comes down to measures, and it comes down to specifically linking the behaviors and skills that are essential for success in pro bono, and how that links to the cultural organization. So great question, because that's the next mission for this year. So yeah, thanks for flagging.
I know from my perspective, when we're engaging volunteers through the foundation, we really encourage them to make sure they include the skill volunteering as a professional development goal as part of their kind of quarterly conversations that they're having with their leaders. So it is, just that constant reminder that this is a professional development opportunity you're undertaking, and we want you to have that conversation and make your leader aware of it. I don't know if you'd have anything else to add there, Jono?
Just really quickly, we've got 3 sort of pillars that people are assessed in their performance. One is whether they live up to our values. The second one is how they perform in their role. And the third one is how they contribute to team, right? Which is, your team, your company, sort of the broader ecosystem of customers and so on like that. And what we find is that it's in the team part that people really demonstrate how they have used foundation leave or volunteering to actually contribute to, for example, engaging their team to give back, or giving back to, a customer, or giving back to a nonprofit or something like that. So it's very broad, but people do use their volunteering as a way of sort of demonstrate how they've participated in that component.
Mm-mm. And we're just getting so many great questions. I'm going to take this one as well from Emma. Advice, maybe, you gave us a story earlier, Jono, around that, that leader's journey, but do you sort of promote those sort of social leadership journeys internally, and share stories around impact to drive engagement?
Again, we don't do it as well, but we're getting better. My advice is know your audience and know how they like to receive stories. So when I was working at Qantas, we would put a picture up of a sick kid, and you'd have 1,000 flighties that would jump on board and do something amazing. You put a sick kid up in a blog in Atlassian and be like, oh, that's really sad. But then you put graphs up and you show the impact, you show what the problem is, and data. People just come alive. And it's really important that you know your audience really well, and you use whatever kind of motivates them to actually share those sort of social impact stories or opportunities for them to get involved.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, building on that, Jono, I think 100%. And I think that's what we've found has been most successful. And it's really, as you say, know to your audience and linking to what's the hook for them, what's important for them, so we found, in terms of, as you say, whether it's, if it's the data propeller heads, for example, great, give them graphs, give them a demonstration around how this has made an impact. For audiences where, we know that, risk decision making is important. And that's where you hook it in and you highlight to them that this is within the, the social context. This is how you can actually develop these skills. So 100% agreed. And it's really linking it in. It's the what's in it for me, right? Which is your 101 of kind of change and communication. What's in it for me, understanding what's relevant for them, and how will they be able to take the message and translate that into something that's going to be meaningful from their perspective.
Yeah, I know with the foundation, because Westpac's goal is around helping, we're always sort of framing stories around how our people are helping and I guess living those company values. And that does definitely seem to resonate because people are very connected to that purpose of the organization. But just conscious we might wrap up now. But before we head off, I just it was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much, Jono and Alice, for joining us. What I took away from it was definitely reminding me about that journey that is important to take people on. I love the idea, Jono, of you talking about detractors and taking them on a journey in particular, and all the different touch points that are open to us, when we're engaging with employees, from kind of new starters all the way through their journey. Alice, it was great to hear from you about lining up those benefits, especially the soft skills. I don't know if soft skills is really the term we should be using, because they're the tricky skills to develop, and how we can line those up with the kind of cultural, values that organizations are really trying to embed. Just the question of measurement, how we can all collectively draw from each other's experience to get better at measurement. So I'm really looking forward to our next session where we're going to draw on some of the skills across our working group to share some insights on that. So looking forward to inviting you along to that next session. But we've got a little quick poll. My colleague Farrell, I don't know if you've got it handy. There she goes. She's on the money. Just because we love a bit of feedback as well. We'd love your thoughts on whether you felt the format was appropriate and whether the content was useful. This is really important to us, that we're obviously adding value to your day. So any ideas on how we can improve, we'd really encourage your feedback. We also have a LinkedIn group if anyone's not on it, and really welcome any thoughts or feedback on that as well. So I'll just give you another sec to complete that. So yeah, that's sort of a wrap for today. We've recorded this, so feel free to share it. We'll do an email shortly with the recording, and you can forward that on to any colleagues that you think might be interested, maybe your HR leadership colleagues, if you want to, and really look forward to being in touch with news of our next webinar. So thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you all. Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Jonna.
Thank you.